Hi, my name's Glenn Hanson, owner of Vector Health. Today we're just going to go through some uh, main components of training young netball athletes. Over the last 4 years, I've taken the Claws netball side in Rockhampton through a couple of programs through pre-season, inter-season, and also then all the way into sort of finals. So I just wanted to cover off making sure that parents of young netball athletes are okay with how our progression moves from, the start of someone's time sort of working with a strength and conditioning coach into a program that's more focused on like elite performance. So there's four main things, I suppose, that we really look at with young athletes, break it into four basic categories. One is their fitness. The other one is stability and mobility in conjunction with each other. The next one is strength, and the afterwards is speed and power. So, to play netball, you need to be able to run, 5 metres or 7 metres, around about that. You need to be able to repeat that at speed, and you need to be able to change direction at speed. So that's the end goal, to be able to run at speed, change direction at great speed, and also then to catch and pass the ball at great speed to increase the transition from one end of the court to the other. So some of those skills comes from, netball coaching, and then some of those skills comes from us in terms of, the strength and conditioning type stuff that we might do with an athlete. So when you start with a young athlete, basically what we're looking to do is improve stability and mobility first. So stability is the ability to resist force. So that means that if you're standing and contesting a ball, you're the one that stays still and stays on the ball, and the other athlete beside you trying to contest with the ball, they're the ones that might move off the ball because you're more stable than them. And stability mainly, in terms of what we look at, is ankle injury prevention, ACL prevention, lower back injury prevention, and that comes from core stability. It comes from better co-contraction, it's called, so where all of the right muscles are working together to create a better landing pattern and a better takeoff pattern in terms of jumping and landing. And also then, the ability to try and resist, the typical like ankle rolls and ankle sprains that netball athletes get. So there's a whole bunch of research on, how to prevent ACL injuries, how to treat ACL injuries, how to prevent ankle injuries. More research has been done on ACL injuries because the general cost of an ACL injury is about $10,000 to an athlete, or probably to their parents as a young athlete. And more if you're a working person, because obviously you've got time off work to consider as well. So being such a massive cost, we focus a lot of energy at the start of our programming on trying to improve an athlete's knee stability. And in conjunction with that, we're then working on mobility, which is the range of motion around a joint. So two key joints to work on there is your shoulder and your hip. So making sure that your thoracic spine, which is the mid part of your back, is supple, it's not stiff. And a lot of young girls through puberty develop like a stiffer thoracic spine for various reasons, but mainly, school posture, leaning over a desk all the time, the advent of mobile phones and playing on iPads and laptops and all that sort of thing. Kids are much more stationary and much more sedentary than they used to be. They sit for 6 hours at school, they do 3 or 4 hours of homework, some of them, and some of them might only play like 1 hour of exercise a day, if that. So, I mean, the balance is very poor. So in the gym, the idea is if you build mobility around the shoulder joint, you build mobility around the hip joint, all the muscles that come into there. Flexibility is the length of a muscle. Mobility is the range of motion around a joint. So flexibility will directly contribute to mobility. So that's what we're looking to try and do with our young athletes. That's the main focus of our programming. The second part of that is then developing speed and fitness. The way that we try and do that is develop better movement patterns. The way you do that is focusing on technique of running, technique of jumping, technique of landing, so that you get more power, you get more speed, you get more acceleration, and you build a better fitness base from doing things more efficiently. It's not necessarily about just making a kid run as hard as they can for as long as they can. The evidence shows that all that does is break a kid down, mentally and physically, especially if they're immobile or not stable. They're working much harder than they need to do the same thing. So that's really the essence of a netball strength and conditioning program to start off. Things like jumping and landing, it sounds really simple, but what we're looking at is knee joint angles. We're looking at hip joint angles. We're looking at what joint, takes the load. The hip joint's the strongest joint in the body. It's the biggest joint in the body. Therefore, we want the hip to take the load. We want the knee to be nice and stable during a landing phase. And any landing phase, whether it's lateral, so this way, or forward and back, you want that stability to stay the same all the time. In terms of then building strength, so the way strength sort of rolls through in terms of like you're maybe a pre-teenage athlete to then a teenage athlete into an adult, is strength works on, getting the person to be able to squat on 2 feet, squat on 1 foot, do a proper lunge with nice alignment through knees, hips and foot, keeping their shoulders nice and square without too much rotation. These sort of things are all the technical things that lead into when you get into late teens, you can then start weightlifting. You can start doing strength and power training that is specific to netball. So, for example, some of our athletes like Shanita Smith from the Claws would be one example. So she started with us doing bodyweight training, doing a thing called a pistol squat. We tested that. We wanted her to be able to single leg squat, full range on one leg. When she could do that, then we started working on squatting with a bar. So we worked on squatting with dumbbell or squatting with a bar. Then we progressed from there into like Olympic weightlifting style movement. So Shanita's gone from the last sort of 5 years of being a person that's worked really hard on stability. She's got great mobility. She's, worked really hard on stability, worked hard on speed, worked hard on power, to now being able to jump more than 2 feet in the air, straight up and down, to being able to, pick up a weight off the ground and throw it to her chin, basically, in a power clean format that's almost her body weight, and repeat it and be able to repeat that in a session. So that her endurance, the ability to provide repeat power efforts across a game is very good. And when you watch that person play, you can see the work that you've done over the last 4 years. So the main thing, like if you're worried as a parent about what we try and do as strength and conditioning coach, if you don't hear a coach say things like, I'm working on stability, mobility, I'm working on making sure that they keep, everything in a straight line, if you don't hear things, about technique in programming, if you just hear about go harder, or if you're not going hard, you're wasting your time, if you're not throwing it like it, things that people say, that's personal training. It's pushing people, around. It's trying to make you work really hard and make you feel like at the end of a session you couldn't have done any more. That's personal training for you at a low level. Strength and conditioning is about performance improvement, and you get performance improvement out of very simple task-orientated, progression. So when you prove to us that you can do something really well, then we challenge you with something else, and that's the way it should work. In a big group setting, things move a little slower. If you're working with someone one-on-one, you're guaranteed to get a faster progression, because you've got someone there helping you every single step of the way. In a group program, we have a group program for a reason. We have a steady state progression, and we try and test people at the start of every term so that then we know that you're getting better. If you're lagging behind, we might suggest that, look, you really need to go and work on these things at home. But realistically, that's what you're looking for in a strength and conditioning program. You're looking for progression. You're looking for the things that make you a better athlete, and a long-term approach rather than just trying to make the best athlete at 15. You're looking for great athletes at 20, because that's when most athletes, boys and girls, really start producing their best performance at around about that age and keep going into their 20s. So if there's any questions on netball athlete performance, more than happy to take them. More than happy if you find me on Facebook. You can find Vector Health. That's my business name on Facebook. You can find that. Message us, ask us a question. Absolutely no problems at all. And I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.